Are you ready to rumble? We have 3 machines, 1 test. Let's see which one does best. Hi folks, it's Darcy from the Purposeful Pantry. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about dehydrating speed and which machine dries the fastest. Up for testing today, this is a non-scientific way of testing 3 different machines on the same product done about the same way that I can. So in this corner is the Nesco 75A. It is a stackable 600 watt machine with 6 trays. In this corner is the Excalibur 3900 TB. It is the non-digital 9 tray Excalibur that is 600 watts. And in this corner is the Cosori premium stainless steel dehydrator, 6 trays, and it is also 600 watts. So what we're testing out are 3 different machines. 2 of them have the same cabinet style build, 1 is a stackable, and how they dry one particular product, all set up the same way between the machines, to see which one dries the most efficiently, the fastest, and the results may surprise you. What I've done is I have chosen 3 zucchini that are all approximately the same size. I didn't weigh them, but by looking at them, they are all approximately the same size. And when you open them up, they look the same on the inside. So there's not one that has more seeds than the other. And I am taking them to a mandolin to get the exact same cut out of every zucchini so that I don't have any thicker cuts versus thinner cuts. They are all the same size. And let me tell you folks, if you're going to use a mandolin, please use a protective glove. It will save the skin off of your fingers and your fingertips. Don't think that you can do it without it. Use the glove, and I'll have a link for that one down below, the one I use now all the time. What I did, also because the Excalibur comes with mesh, I went ahead and made sure that I used mesh on the Cosori and the Nesco so that everybody was starting at the same point, that we didn't have anybody having a benefit to the other. I also loaded 1 tray as if you would be loading it for a regular dehydrating run. I didn't try to do the zucchini between all the trays of the dehydrator, having 2 or 3 pieces per tray. So I loaded 1 tray as normal because I wanted to make sure that it ran on what would be a normal dehydrating run. The other tray, because each of the machines took 2 trays, the other tray, I just put what was left over, the slices that didn't slice so well, and any leftover bits. So for each machine, the zucchini took 2 trays. It was just how they were set up. I then tried to make sure that I was placing each tray, both of those trays, in the middle of the 2 cabinet machines, and then dropped the zucchini trays in the Nesco down a little bit so that they weren't right up next to the motor. The fan. So that is one slight drawback for the Nesco, is that because everything is done stackable, those things that are closest to the fan are going to dry faster than those things further away from the fan. Whereas in a cabinet style, the way that the air blows across them gives all of the trays about the same amount of heated air to dry. So it does put the Nesco at a slight disadvantage, but not for the results, if that makes sense. Okay, so at what is about the 3.5 hour mark, let's go ahead and check what these are looking like. You can see that the skins are very dry. They are still quite pliable, but you can see the shrinkage happening with all of the zucchini and the Excalibur. All right. Then we move to the Nesco. Why, let me turn on some light. That would help you too, wouldn't it? Nope, kind of washes it out. What we're seeing here is not much shrinkage. You see some drying on the surface, but the bottom, but they're not quite ready. They're not even remotely coming up to what Excalibur is. All right, now let's get back into the Cosori. We are at a kind of halfway place between the Excalibur and the Nesco. We have obvious drying happening. Some shrinkage is starting to happen around the cells, but they're about halfway through. So these still probably have a good couple hours, at least a good 4 hours to go. Okay, it has officially been about 7 hours. And oftentimes chips are done at this time, so we're going to check these out.
the Excalibur is, there we go. Those are dry. I'm going to let them sit here and cool so we can test them for sure, because they're not all in these shrunken up little chips like this, but these are relatively dry chips. There we go. Now we're going to change it to do the Nesco, which I can't turn it off until I unplug it, so sorry for the noise. Here we go. These are not quite done. Okay, the reason I know that is like this one, you can see I can bend it and it doesn't do anything. There we go. With these, when I bend them, they are going to crack. Okay, so that's done. These are still bendy here, and then some of these are still just completely pliable. So these probably need about 2 more hours to go. So we'll just put this back on. And again, I apologize for the noise. And then let's go to the last one. This is the Cosori. And these, like, ooh, that's warm. That's one of those things you have to remember, that's warm. These are dry. Okay, we always let things cool off before you... Okay, so here we go. Cosori, Nesco, Excalibur. Let's see what worked. They've had some time to warm up, so this is when you can do the true test. Firm, easy to crack. These are dry. These, still very pliable. They need a few more hours in the dehydrator, and this one is actually still wet. As you can see right here, there's a little moisture there on the silicone. And then this is the Excalibur, also quite dry and ready to go. So
now, did those results surprise you at all? They actually surprised me. I fully expected the Excalibur to be the first one off the blocks, and then it would be the first one done, and everything else would be kind of crawling behind in succession. That, you know, the Cosori would take a little longer, the Nesco would take quite a bit longer. I was really surprised that the Nesco and the Excalibur finished at about the same time. There was no big difference between when they were finally finished. What I did see is that the Excalibur had a faster initial results than the Cosori did, that when I pulled out trays after about the 2-hour mark, I was noticing the shriveling effect in the Excalibur more than I did in the Cosori, but by the time you got finished, they were finished at about the same time. So that surprised me. Now the Nesco obviously is going to take a couple more hours in that test to get it finished, because it wasn't even, like, they were still almost wet. I mean, they weren't wet, but they were just still obviously not dried yet. So it was going to take longer for the Nesco. Okay, so now I want to talk about the differences and benefits of each of the machines. I'm not trying to sell you a machine. Of course, I will leave you links down below if that makes it easier for you, but you don't have to. I'm not trying to sell you a particular machine. I will be the first one to tell you, Excalibur is no longer the best machine on the market. I don't recommend it right off the bat all the time. I am not such a diehard fan of it that I think that's the only machine anybody should ever have. But what I do want to say is that I want to give you the kind of a breakdown really quickly of each machine, so that you understand how they work, so that if you're about to make the investment, you can kind of decide if these are the machines for you, or to be able to look for those things in another machine. Okay? So first, the Excalibur, pros and cons. Pros, it's huge. It does a lot of food. You have 9 trays that are 14 by 14, so you get much more volume in it. Okay, it is a powerhouse of a machine. It has been around forever. It has a good reputation of the machines lasting forever. Now, of course, there are duds out there. Some people haven't had the best results with them. Their customer service has really declined in the last year and a half, as a lot of companies have had problems. However, it is a great machine. It is expensive. On the scale of all the machines, it is on the expensive side. Yes, you can get them for about $170 if you can find a really great sale on woot.com, which is an Amazon company, or if you can find it in the Amazon warehouse. Of course, you can get better deals on Facebook Marketplace for people who are trying to get rid of theirs, or if you can find it at the thrift store or a garage sale. But if we're talking retail, that's easiest for people just to go out and buy. But for the most part, they run from about $225 to around $450, depending on which model that you get at the Excalibur. I have the non-digital version, but the digital versions are more expensive. I also use the one that doesn't have a timer, because honestly, I hate the timer. Okay, the timer doesn't do anything for you except tell you that the machine has turned off. It doesn't tell you that your food is done. It reminds you to go check it. That's all it does. Okay, so benefits and drawbacks of the Cosori. It is so quiet. That's the biggest thing for me, is the fact that I can run the machine in my laundry room and we cannot hear it. Having the doors open, it's not, it has more space between the trays. So that means if you are trying to do bulk things like greens, you can still use all 6 of your trays, get everything in there, dry them, and they're fine. In the Excalibur, you have to take out every other tray to be able to put that bulk in there to make sure that you aren't going to make a mess opening and closing trays. So that means you're only running 5 trays anyway. Okay, now the price is $150 generally. Now you can get it cheaper using Amazon Warehouse for around $99 to about $125. That's where the price has been bouncing. Sometimes they run a sale, and then but that's the general price, is $159.99, I think, is their normal price. Then it is, like I said, it's quiet. It's stainless steel for those of you who care about that kind of thing. There is no plastic in the housing that you're going to be touching or running over your food. The drawback for it for me is that with those stainless steel trays, things tend to stick more on them because the way that the stainless steel is, the grates are farther apart, so things fall through easier than they do on the Excalibur because you're running on that mesh. So I find that I want to use the mesh all the time. And the last drawback about that is the mesh does not go to the end of each of those trays. There's like a ½ inch gap around it, which to me is wasted space. Then on the Nesco, benefits are the price. The benefit is that it is a really solid machine that will last you a very long time at the price. They run from $65 to around $100 depending on where you are in a particular sales cycle of availability. But they're really inexpensive and you can find them often at thrift stores everywhere. Otherwise, the drawbacks for a Nesco is that it takes longer to dry than the other two. You can get less on a tray because the trays are smaller, they're circular, they have the hole in the middle, and that all takes up that eats up a lot of space. And because it is a stackable, you often have to rotate trays to get them evenly dried throughout. You have to make a more concerted effort to rotate to make sure everybody gets their chance in front of the fan, because that's where you want to be to dry faster. It takes up less space. I don't find it is a little more quiet than the Excalibur, but it's louder than the Cosori. So I would recommend any of these machines because at the end of the day, your budget matters, your space matters, and your needs matter. Not everybody needs a big Excalibur. Not everybody has a place to put the big Excalibur. Not everybody cares about stainless steel. Not everybody wants a timer. And I think I've given you my thoughts on a timer. And not everybody has the budget for the bigger machines. So if you want my personal opinion, okay, what I would buy if I was getting a new machine today, had my knowledge but didn't have my experience, I would go with the Cosori hands down. Because it's so much cheaper. Most people aren't trying to put a ton of stock in their pantry for long term. They're doing some, or they want to snack with it a lot. They want to make a lot of beef jerky, but they're not really interested in doing other stuff. And they want quiet. That's why I would choose the Cosori for those reasons. Now, my heart still loves my Excalibur. My pantry loves my Excalibur because I can do more at one time. My budget likes the Cosori. Okay, that's where we are. So I hope this was helpful information for you. I hope that it helped you make a decision about what you might want to do in the future for your house. If you have questions about any of these machines, please leave them down below. I know many of you have a different machine that you love that does this thing, but we're just talking about these 3 machines today. So if you have questions, leave them down below. And if you have one of them, I'd love it if you would talk about the benefits and the drawbacks of what you see in your home with your machine to help readers see how somebody else uses these. So thanks for watching. Happy dehydrating, and I'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, subscribe. If you like this, subscribe. Please subscribe.